Or not. Hello everyone, I'm just getting confirmation that we've started and then I'll get straight into it. Cool, alrighty. Welcome guys, thank you for coming along today and joining us for a lunchtime session with Sarah Holden, where we will be hearing about Sarah's research into the sustainability profession in New Zealand. We're very appreciative of Sarah taking her time to share her research with us. If you've read the report, you will appreciate the extensive amount of time and energy that has gone into producing it. Before we get into it, I would just like to introduce myself, give a little bit of a background on SBN and the Now Crowd. So my name is Jack Brown. I am on the board of the Now Crowd, which is the Young Professionals Network that's running this event. SBN is the parent organisation and it's our New Zealand's largest, longest standing sustainable business association. Their network includes over 600 organisations throughout New Zealand and across a diverse number of industries. SBN has focused on upskilling and building momentum in the sustainability industry for individuals and organisations. And they do this in a variety of ways, one of which is TNC. The Now Crowd is a professionals network for young individuals who are in the early stages of their career and are eager to drive sustainability initiatives in their organisations. The Now Crowd helps to aim young people in the right direction to build capacity, confidence and impact around sustainability, and we do this with a range of tools like this event, mentoring and other resources. We recently made the pivot to online events and have had some great success in reaching you guys. We'll continue these lunchtime sessions and we are also putting together our first in-person event in a while, which is really exciting. So keep an eye out for that. We've been running for 2 years now and I think we've seen some really great results, really starting to build momentum in the sustainability industry and become a name in the networking space. If you're keen to get involved in the Now Crowd, now is the time. Check us out on the SBN website or flick Holly an email at holly@sustainable.org.nz if you've got any questions about the Now Crowd or SBN's work. As you can imagine, the Now Crowd is extremely excited for this piece of research on sustainability professionals. The survey was carried out in partnership with SBN, SBC and AUT University, surveying sustainability professionals across all levels around the country. The results of the survey were summarised in the report Insights on NZ Sustainability Professionals, which is available for download on the Oxygen Consulting website. It's in the event description. Before I hand over to Sarah, I would just like to give a few thoughts on why the Now Crowd board wanted to get Sarah along to share her work with us. We talk with lots of sustainability practitioners around Auckland, and we know that this industry is significantly less structured than traditional industries in New Zealand. It can be daunting at the best of times to take on the role in the sustainability industry, or even identify the skills to focus on in order to prepare yourself for a shift in the future. As the job market has become a significantly more difficult place to navigate, we thought it would be a particularly good time to ask Sarah to share her findings with us so you all have up-to-date information and can navigate the market with a bit more confidence. We know the makeup of our membership is not limited to those in sustainability roles. In fact, most of you do not have sustainability in your title, but work hard to incorporate sustainability principles in what you do. We hope this session will help you understand what the value is you're bringing to the company and how to maximize its effects. Just before I hand over, we're going to pop up a poll so you guys can see, so we can see where you guys are coming from and what you're up to. So if you could have a go at ticking a box there. Also, we'll be doing a question time at the end, but can I just ask that you limit your questions to the Q&A box rather than the chat box, and also keep them short and simple so we can get them to Sarah to answer. Awesome, that's all from me. So I'll hand over to Sarah. In 2 seconds.
Great. Thank you, Jack. That was a wonderful introduction, and I'm very keen to see the results of that survey poll. I don't know if that can be, oh, here we go. All right, this is quite interesting. So there's a few people not employed and not studying. No one's currently a student. Quite a few people employed in a different profession, so about a quarter of you. And then another quarter of you who are interested. Okay, and then early career professionals, that's nearly half of you, and a few experienced professionals in there as well. Okay, that's really helpful for me to know in terms of this presentation, and I'll keep that in mind as I'm going through the content. But first of all, thank you very much for having me here today, Jack, and it was a really excellent introduction. I'm very proud of this research as someone who's been involved in sustainability for about 20 odd years now. So it feels very validating to have been able to, I guess, pull together a body of information now that can be useful to a range of different groups. And I thought today, instead of, I guess, going over the webinar launch that we did a few weeks ago, which covered the bulk of the insights in the report, what I thought I would do today is to give you guys a little bit of background about my sustainability journey, and then to attempt to answer the questions that Holly had outlined in the invitation. So that should take around about 15 to 20 minutes. And hopefully we've got quite a bit of time at the end for all of your questions as well. So I'll just flick over to my presentation now and we'll get started. Alrighty. So my journey into sustainability, well, it began really back in 2001. I had just finished my Bachelor of Science degrees studying environmental and marine science. And I was starting into my PhD on environmental and marine science. And I sort of realized that at the time I was working in 3 different hospitality jobs, and that that probably wasn't really conducive to a career in something relating to environmental and marine science. So I started to look at what are the options for part-time work to support me as I continued my studies through my PhD. And I came across an organisation. At the time they were called Auckland Environmental Business Network, led by Rachel Brown. And they then merged with an organisation called Businesses for Social Responsibility and became the Sustainable Business Network. At the time, I guess when I was looking at other jobs outside of waiting on tables, I was thinking to myself, I really love environmental science, but I can't really see myself sitting around in the forest measuring quadrants and counting seedlings. That didn't seem really up my alley. So I actually had wanted to get into business, and probably a lot like many students who go through their degree and they get to the end of it and they think they actually want to do something different. I was kind of in that position too. So I was desperate to find a job that was in business but involved a lot of what I learned and loved in the way of environmental and marine science. And when I came across AEBN, or SBN as they're now known, what I discovered was an organisation that was set up to help businesses and understand, I guess, how they could improve their environmental impacts at the time. And then that extended as they merged with Businesses for Social Responsibility to cover the whole social side of sustainability as well, that broader social, environmental, financial perspective of business sustainability. And I was so excited because I sort of felt like I'd found my happy spot. I was working in business, but I was able to apply this body of knowledge and information that I had been studying and that I loved. So that was an enormous stepping stone for me. It provided me with, I spent, I think, the best part of 4 or 5 years at SBN, just working with a whole range of different businesses of all different sizes within different industries, and helping them with implementing sustainability practices. One of their members was IAG, and I was fortunate enough to take up a role as a sustainability consultant there as the next part of my journey. That led on to working for Westpac as their sustainability manager. And I should say, in that time that I was at IAG, I worked between IAG New Zealand. I worked through, I guess, a succession of sustainability roles between IAG New Zealand and IAG Australia. And when I came back, took up the sustainability manager role at Westpac. I guess it's important to note as well, in that time, this was a real growth time. I guess when you're without, when you're young and free, I should say, you're not encumbered by having a family to prioritise. You work very hard. So I did work very long and hard hours in those jobs, and I really, I guess, threw myself at them as to understand that these are not just opportunities that will pave the way for the rest of my career, but really embracing the learning and experience that I could gain from the organisation and through others in those organisations. In that time, I actually also had a couple of kids. So one while I was towards the end of IAG, and another one during my time at Westpac. And I guess what I started to find as well was that when you have a family, your priorities start to shift. And I was finding that I was starting to build life around my work rather than work around my life. So when I got to 2018, I decided I'm going to step out on my own now and set up Oxygen Consulting, because I wanted to, I guess, put work around my life rather than life around my work. And I felt like I had the capability and experience by then. It had always been a dream of mine to set up my own business, my own sustainability consulting business, which is how Oxygen got started. And that same work ethic around prioritising life over work, or working for life rather than living to work, is certainly an ethic that I have for myself and for my team as well who work with me. So we have, there are 4 of us at Oxygen Consulting now, and we help businesses to execute sustainable business strategy. We help them with some very technical things like their emissions profiles, undertaking their materiality assessments, but also the softer skill, we build capability as well within their teams, and help them with their communications as well, and reporting as well. So I guess one of the things that happened during that journey, my own sustainability journey, is that during that time, a lot of people had always asked me, how do you get, and increasingly so in the last couple of years since I'd been out on my own in Oxygen, and a lot of people had asked me, how do you get into a sustainability profession? And I always felt at the time that when I answered that question, it was always just talking from my own experience. And I knew that many of my sustainability peers had come from so many different places and walks of life to get into their own sustainability professions. So I can't, and then I sort of thought, well, what I would really like to do is to have some kind of like information or repository of data or insights that I can hand over to these people and say, here, this is what this is about. This is what sustainability jobs are like. These are the capabilities that you need, and that sort of thing. When I spoke to Sustainable Business Network and Sustainable Business Council about the idea of doing this research, they also said we actually have a whole lot of members asking us, how do we specify these jobs into our organisations? Because in the last couple of years, sustainability has undergone quite a significant growth. So, so I guess they were quite keen to partner on this research for that motivation as well. And AUT were very excited to be involved, And I was very appreciative of their involvement and the rigor that they brought through their ethics process to this research, but moreover, understanding that the insights that would come from this would be useful in helping to hone some of the academic pathways and curriculums that they have available through their learning institutes. So that's a little bit of background on my sustainability journey and how we've arrived at this, this lovely report here. It's available, as Jack said, to download off the Oxygen Consulting website, and I do welcome your feedback on it. So we will be looking to do this continually on an annual basis as well, because I'm quite interested to see how this profession will continue to evolve over time, and I suspect it will go through a range of changes in the next few years. So I guess what I'll do now is I'm going to go and address the questions that Holly came up with in the invitation. So the first one was, what skills do sustainability professionals need? So when we asked this question as well in the research, what we found was the top 5 skills are communication skills, building partnership skills, strategic skills, and problem solving, and also leadership skills. So that's the top 5. And those are relevant both now and into the future. So we asked people to compare what's important now with what do they think is going to be more important in the future. But we can also see that project management, reporting skills, people management skills, and technical knowledge are pretty high as well. And when you think about that skill set, that's quite a range of different skills there, and it requires you to have both that sort of bird's eye lens across the bigger picture, the more strategic things, but at the same time also be able to like get stuck into things like reporting and analysis and data to really dig into the detail and I guess muck in and get the job done as well. I guess that's a really, really important thing to bear in mind as well, because often, you know, people will put themselves into boxes and say, well, I'm a big picture person, or, you know, I'm a data person, or I guess with sustainability jobs, it's not that you have to be everything, but it does stretch you, I guess, to challenge and push yourself into perhaps areas where you don't necessarily feel as competent, and that's actually a really good thing. In terms of other skills as well, so you do need to be a strong influencer. We asked people, what do you spend more of your time doing, influencing versus implementing sustainability? And we found that people spend more than double the amount of their time influencing. So this includes an ability to persuade people to see things through their eyes and be able to get them on board with sustainability in a way that's meaningful to them. In terms of the types of responsibilities in these roles, there's a strong focus on managing sustainability strategy, development and delivery, also stakeholder engagement and reporting, with the more senior operators having a greater level of responsibility for strategy development and governance processes. All right, so the next question that Holly asked was, I'm deeply passionate about sustainability, but I'm struggling to get sustainability focused into a sustainability focused role. What advice do you have for me? So I guess what I would say is, if you're already in a job, so many of you are already in a job, but you're wanting to get into a sustainability focused job, try and start a movement within the organization you're in, whether or not that is volunteering to set something up, a green team, or getting a whole bunch of people involved in forming a bit of a green team. I think you can, like, it might sound a little bit fluffy, but I think it's if you can go ahead and get started on that, you'll find that others will want to join you and support you as well. And you can actually count those skills towards an actual sustainability position if you're looking to get into like a sustainability consultant or advisor role. don't underestimate the importance of that experience in terms of setting something up within your own organisation. Whether or not it has been formalised or not, it still counts. I'd also suggest volunteering for other organisations that give you that exposure to a broad range of sustainability businesses. So for example, the Sustainable Business Network, that's a great place to start. I know many people have kind of started there in a volunteering capacity and have gone on to either work there or work in other organisations. And also being part of things like this, like the Now crowd, staying in touch and staying connected. Again, like the value of those relationships that you build in the sector are really important. Sustainability professionals are very much a warm whānau, and I think the more you can connect and interact with them as a group, you'll find that they'll start to advocate and recommend you and refer you. So the more connections you can make, the better. Okay, what is more important for sustainability roles? Tertiary qualifications or real world experience? So I would say, if we just have a look at like the research for a second here, so 95% of sustainability professionals actually have a tertiary degree. 42% of them are largely in science, 22% in business and commerce. However, I would have to say that while that says something about your intelligence and ability to apply yourself, it's actually the real world experience that employers are looking at more. And the reason for this is it is applied. Degrees, as you can see, come from so many places, and sustainability covers so much territory. So it's really quite difficult to kind of say there's any one specific degree that will nail it for you. And I do think that the rubber hits the road when you have a job, regardless of whatever degree you have. And as I said, it's the relationships that you build. They are really, really important. But I would say though, having a tertiary degree does build a set of skills that will help you with being resilient in your sustainability role. You will gain perseverance, determination, tenacity doing any degree, the ability to see things through, good research skills, problem solving skills, and sound arguments. And all of those skills are definitely useful in sustainability roles. And I think if you're going to hone in on one degree, maybe you would look at something in and around climate science, because I would, from my own personal experience and what I've seen, it's definitely the gap area for many organisations, that kind of green, the environmental space, and in particular understanding the impact of climate change and climate risk, what it means to the business, and what they're going to do about it. So I think if you're going to study anything, whether that's through a degree or not through a degree, hone in on that. It is definitely our most pressing issue globally, and having a deep understanding of the science behind climate change will be invaluable in a sustainability professional role. Yes, so just to emphasize that point. So in the research, we found that climate change was the top area of focus for organisations engaging in sustainability, both now and into the future. What are the key challenges for people stepping into sustainability, and how do we navigate these? So I guess there's a few things here. So although one of the main challenges that I've seen in my peers is this, the challenge of expectation versus reality. So many sustainability professionals are very values-based. They see the systemic challenges of things, and they want this. They want to see us achieving what is possible, like what the science tells us we need to be achieving. And the challenge is that organisations don't necessarily have the same appetite as the sustainability professionals on that front. So there's a little bit of a tempering between where you want to take the organisation versus where the organisation thinks it needs to go. And despite the fact that 50% of respondents said their organisations are using sustainability for transformation, I think what I would note is that what transformation means to a sustainability professional can be quite different to what the organisation envisages. So it can be frustrating as a professional when you see the bigger picture, the potential of what is possible for the organisation, and yet it moves more incrementally than what you're hoping it will do. So I guess that how you would address that is you do need to keep pace with the appetite of the business, but at the same time, don't lose your edginess, don't lose that bringing in of thought leadership, challenging the status quo. It is a fine balance, and but I do think that that's really the best way to navigate that challenge. Challenge of resourcing is also one of the things that we often struggle with. So in the research here, you'll see sustainability professionals, many of them have identified that they don't feel that they're very well resourced. Now, when we think about resourcing, that includes both budget, staff, and investment in the active solutions or activities. So it's hard to achieve what you need to when you don't have the budget or people, or if it's not prioritised. And that can also be a challenge in these sustainability roles. So what I would suggest is you just ensure that if you're in one of these roles and you have a limited budget, really making sure you have a sound business case backing your activities, because when you have that, really the organisation can't argue with supporting it. Another challenge is silos. So sometimes these roles are the only ones in the business, and many sustainability professionals actually indicated that while they felt supported by the organisation, it was difficult to progress into other roles as they are seen as the sustainability person rather than someone with a wide set of transferable capabilities. And you can see here as well, that's reflected in another one of our statistics around whether or not there's a clear promotional pathway from sustainability into another role in the organisation. 83% said no. So I guess really the key thing that I would say here is part of this is you, part of it is the organisation. In terms of what you can do, I think it's really important not to hibernate in your role. You may be the only sustainability person in your organisation, but get out and engage with the other teams, spend time in their teams, go to their meetings and brief them, find ways to give them ownership and involvement of the sustainability agenda. And I guess the other challenge in these roles is the risk of burnout. So this is really important that you ensure your work-life balance. You can see here in our research, and this was really, really interesting as well, sustainability professionals compared to other New Zealand professionals, so that's all other New Zealand professions, their level of job stress is 62%, and New Zealand professionals' job stress is sitting at 50%. Similarly, work demands for sustainability professionals are 18% higher than other professionals. So we know that these sustainability professional roles are spinning a lot of plates, got a lot of pots boiling. So it's really important that you all, if you're in one of these roles, ensure you have work-life balance. Like, it's great to enjoy your work, but you are not working to live. You are working to live. You're not living to work, no matter how enjoyable the work is. And I guess as, touching back on my own experience there, that was definitely one of the reasons why I set up Oxygen. I just sort of found myself really trying to almost juggle life around my work. And I asked myself, well, if I had to choose work or family, what would it be? And it's, obviously it's family. So why was I putting work first, even though I loved my work? So it's really important, I think, even if you love your role, make sure you're balancing it with your work, with your life. And I guess on that note, I would say sustainability jobs are awesome, and the research shows that job satisfaction of sustainability professionals is 12% higher than for other New Zealand professions, and that is fantastic. So despite the fact that they're working a lot harder, stress is much more, they actually love what they're doing. So that goes to show, I think people in these roles really are quite purposeful, and they will go the extra mile to move the dial for a greater good. Final question. I'm fortunate to be a sustainability professional. How can I support those trying to start a career in the field? So I guess what I'd say is expose them to sustainability through these events, networking, webinars, point them to core sustainability frameworks that there's a hell of a lot of information online around some of the key frameworks, and it's all free, that underpin sustainability practices. Things like the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, the Global Reporting Initiative, integrated reporting, SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, science-based targets, Task Force for Climate-related Disclosures. Many of these frameworks and guidelines are freely available, and I would suggest if someone is wanting to build their knowledge in this space, those are great places to start learning. And I guess also helping them to understand what these careers really look like. They aren't all glam, as you've seen through the research and through this presentation. And I guess for some people, the gap between the expectation versus reality of sustainability in business can actually be too much. So if you're someone who's wanting to find out more about these jobs, and you know someone who is in one of these jobs, shadowing that person or shadowing your friends in these roles could be also a useful way, spending a day with them in their job to really understand and see what does it look like in practice, and also what are the different applications for sustainability, because it's not just in business. There's applied ecology, environmental science, there's waste and product stewardship, the circular side of things. And then there's, of course, all the social side of sustainability as well, around people, diversity and inclusion and community. So it really depends on what your interests, or where your interests and passions lie. And so try to find people who are in those roles and shadow them if you can, to get a real sense of what it's like in the real world. So I guess that's where I wanted to leave it. And hand over to you guys for your questions. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. I could see a lot of the last 3 years of my life and the next few years that I'm planning to do in that research, and it's nice to kind of see that there is actually a bit of a progressive structure there that you can kind of take part in, and that we're not alone. We did have some great questions submitted while you were talking, so I'll just get, where are they? Yeah. So first one that we've got is that, and you can still ask questions, guys, so pop them in the Q&A and we'll get them answered. So eco-anxiety is a very common thing for young people these days. How do young people turn this into action?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Eco-anxiety is a very common thing for young people these days. How do you suggest young people can turn this into action? I guess that's both in their jobs and any other way.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, like even seasoned sustainability professionals can get pretty doom and gloom about the future, and perhaps the hopelessness of what they're trying to achieve. But I would say, like, my advice would be, I would rather spend my energy trying to be part of solving the problem than to go down crashing and burning, worrying about it. So, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, things like COVID-19 and how we all came together during that lockdown really, I guess, gives us a sense of the power of collective action. And I think the same is true for sustainability as well. And things like addressing climate change, we have to do it collectively. And so if we kind of throw our hands in the air and in despair, you know, it's never really going to change anything. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I think yeah, you're right, and I think that there's another question that kind of leads into this and the eco-anxiety thing, and that's a person has asked, I'm thinking about returning to study and studying specifically sustainability. Would you recommend this? I guess that whether they should retrain or not.
Well, I guess, you know, in my presentation, like right now, if you're wanting to get into sustainability, the reality is, like many jobs, not just the sustainability profession, but there aren't actually many jobs available for anyone in anything right now. And unfortunately, that situation is probably going to get a little bit worse before it gets any better. So in the meantime, I would suggest, if you are able to continue, you know, your learning, or even start doing some tertiary learning, then it's probably a good opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is an interesting time to be looking for work at the moment. Okay, and then I guess this kind of leads into that getting in new roles. Have you seen any ways to increase diversity in the sustainability industry?
Do you mean, how do you mean?
Well, I guess it's diversity of all kinds. I mean, I know that it's, and I think the research was showing that it's mostly young people that are in is it 64% or something young people?
Yeah, there's predominantly female, so it's skewed more towards females. And in terms of age groups, I think we found that they're mostly people in their 30s, so 26 to 45, but with the bulk of them sitting in their 30s. Ethnicities, that's something I'd like to refine for next year. Like many people identified themselves as either New Zealand European, New Zealander, New Zealand, like Pākehā. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to sort of disseminate the nuances of ethnicity within that. So that's something we'll definitely improve for next year. Mm-hmm. But I guess it's one of those professions where it's kind of about supporting diversity in the workforce. Yeah. Like it's a big part of I guess sustainability. So it's sort of about turning it upon ourselves, maybe, and thinking, how do we encourage people from you know, have a more inclusive process to bring people from different diverse groups into this profession.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. And then, for people that are looking to enter the profession, would you, based on the research, I guess, would you recommend specializing in a certain area of sustainability, or trying to be a more generalist approach and going across the different frameworks and across the different services?
Well, I guess if you've got an interest in a particular industry, that will probably help to narrow it down as well, because how sustainability is applied across different industries can vary. For example, in a services-based industry, there's a lot more focus around operational sustainability versus a product-based or an industry that produces a product. There's a much stronger focus on supply chain sustainability. So I guess that's one aspect to it. But if you can have a grounding in some of the broad frameworks that I mentioned and guidelines these are universal and used by many different businesses across many different sectors. So I think that's probably a great foundation.
Yeah. And then we had a question about insights for people preparing to go overseas. So I guess that kind of ties into that same question. Is there any particular qualifications, or most of them are European standards anyway, but is there any specific groups or anything that are helpful to get into the overseas markets?
Again, I think that more comes down to your connections than, like, in the same way it's true if someone who's been active in another country comes into New Zealand, they really need to reconnect, they need to connect with the local sustainability professionals networks in order to kind of get a foot through the door. Yeah. So sorry, I don't really have that question.
I think that, you talked a lot about that network being important, and it does sound like that's a really important part of the sustainability industry. And as part of that, you talked about influence and that being a good skill. One of our questions is that how do you balance influence with being too pushy, and some tips to be a good influencer, I guess?
Well, I would say it's your ability to see things through other people's eyes and empathize and understand, their worldview, so that you can really then see how does sustainability fit. What are the the trigger points or the things that they're going to latch onto that make sustainability make sense to them? Because the last thing anyone wants is someone kind of pushing their view onto them when they don't necessarily believe it. They need to believe it for themselves. So if you're able to see things through their eyes and understand the trigger points or the things that are going to help them to make sustainability meaning for them, that's your power of influence.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, awesome. And we've got a question here about LCA. It was interesting to see life cycle assessments have such a low reference as a future growth area. What was this area of the questionnaire multi-choice, or was it based on people's own thoughts?
So that was multi-choice.
Okay, cool.
And I think, like, from experience, like the life cycle assessment side of things tends to be when you have a product based organizations with a product. So that's probably why it's pushed a little bit lower, because the other areas or the other boxes responsibilities that were rated much higher are more universal across all organizations.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I guess this question's the millennials question. How long would you recommend spending in a position before progressing on?
Yeah, well, again, like, if you just drawing on my own experience there, I did spend comparative to what I think people do these days. I was in these organizations for quite a long time, but I think you probably want to be, whether or not you're either within an organization or looking to move on, you should be looking to move on to your next role after a couple of years. I think a couple of years gives you, 2 to 3 years gives you a reasonably deep experience within one role. Mm-hmm. So whether you're in the same organization, you're moving into a new role within that organization, that kind of 2 or 3 year mark is probably about the time when you feel like you've absorbed as much as you can, and you've learned some stuff and you're ready for a new challenge.
Sure. Cool. And then how do we change the career progression structure for sustainability professionals? Often there are only one person per organization, and it's not clear how to get into that role.
Yeah. How do we change the career progression? Well, I think one thing to bear in mind is this is still a relatively new profession when you compare it to, say, things like law and accounting and HR, which have quite well-established successions and hierarchical structures to the different types of roles. These roles are still emerging, and they're still growing as well and changing. So I don't actually have a clear answer to that question. I think part of it is, you do have to be the author of your own future to an extent. You can't rely on the organisation to offer you up a role. We know that many of these sustainability professionals have vast capabilities that are highly transferable. So one part of it, but that's not also often recognised. So I think one part of it is also the professional themselves sort of latching on to maybe another role within the organisation that they see they are interested in or have a natural progression towards, and really push for it too.
Yeah, cool. And then I guess this is probably, we've got two more maybe. You mentioned a change in the sustainability industry over time. Based on kind of what you saw in the research, what are some key themes that you see in the next short to medium term in the developing industry?
I think that climate change will continue to become a risk that more and more organisations are needing to address. 20 years ago, it was seen as this sort of like fluffy, kind of far off sort of problem that we don't need to worry about. But increasingly, we're seeing, boards of directors having responsibilities for it, needing to report on it. And as things like the Zero Carbon Act come into play, I think that's going to raise it in terms of it becoming almost like compliance to organisations in the same way that health and safety is. So I think that's where I see things going on that front.
Cool. Alrighty, well, we've got 10 minutes to go, so I might just jump onto the fast five. And if there's any other questions, I'm sure we can flick them through to Sarah afterwards, and she'll be able to give them a go. So what is your favourite article or book you've read lately?
Oh.
Maybe through lockdown.
So someone sent me this article recently. It's quite an old article actually. It's an interview with the CEO from PepsiCo Global, a lady called Indra Nooyi. It was written in 2014, and I think it was called "You Can't Have It All," and it speaks to that quite honestly. It's wonderful that there's a real push for women in leadership, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for that. But I think the other thing that the other side of that is there's not a lot of acknowledgement about what you're giving up as well when you get into these big senior GM roles. And it was a fantastic and very honest and transparent interview with Indra Nooyi around the compromises that come with trying to be a parent and trying to have this full-on CEO job. So I really enjoyed that.
Cool. We'll put a link to that in our wrap-up email along with the questions. There's a lot of news sources out there. What are your go-tos for staying up to date with global issues and sustainability trends?
Yeah, I mean, apart from the sort of subject area updates that come out of the likes of, GRI and SDGs and things like that, good kind of mass media information around sustainability. I really enjoy the Guardian publications. I think they do a really great job of covering issues that are relevant to everyone. And the reason I like reading mass media articles and information is because when you think about sustainability, it's something that everyone needs to be to be on board with. It's not something that it's just this exclusive niche group of people who are, have a strong kind of interest in. It should be something that everyone's interested in. So I'm really interested. I'm always fascinated in seeing how it gets disseminated into that kind of public view. So for that reason, Guardian is great at a global level. I do enjoy newsroom and stuff here and coverage in New Zealand.
Nice. Good to get a shout out for Rod Oram at Newsroom. In a sentence, what would you recommend to a young professional who is looking to make the most of the current job market?
Okay, in the words of Richie McCaw, actually, start again. So, just keep going. Don't give up. You get to the end of one day, you might be completely frustrated. Go to sleep, wake up, and start again. Just keep trying.
Yeah. And then I guess this leads into that question, what are the 3 characteristics you would like to see in a sustainability champion in 2020?
I think systems thinking and problem solving. Those are 2 really key characteristics. And I think that kind of ability to connect with people, so that seeing things through people's eyes, that empathy, I think that's another strong trait.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. And then in New Zealand, what organisations are you keeping an eye on at the moment for their sustainability progress?
Well, I mean, I guess all organisations, you want to keep an eye on. Some of the leaders, I think, when you think about sustainability leaders as well, it's quite industry specific. So, for example, I think Westpac is a leader in the financial services sector here in New Zealand. EcoStore is a leader in the sort of personal and hygiene category, and then you've got companies like Synlait who are leaders in that kind of agri sector. So I think it's important to keep an eye across every sector, and that there's opportunities for leadership within each of those sectors.
Cool. I guess that's a warming comment to anyone that's looking in the job market, that there's lots of options out there. Okay, cool. So thank you so much for your time today, Sarah, and for talking with us. It's great I feel like this is a great target audience for your work, and hopefully our crew has learned something. Just reminding everyone that the report is on the Oxygen website, and it's the Insights on New Zealand's Sustainability Professionals, which you can download from there. So to wrap up, we hope you've enjoyed today's lunchtime session. Keep an eye out for the next one and our first in-person event. You can keep up with all of the events on the Now Crowd Facebook page. And if you're not a member, get in touch to register. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much for your time and for putting the report together in the first place. It's extremely valuable to people in our position. And we hope you all have a great week. We'll get those questions, those last 3 questions that I can see there, answered, and we'll get the articles that were referenced all put together into a wrap-up document and sent out to you guys. If you want any more information about the Now Crowd, email holly@sustainability.org.nz. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks, Jack, and thank you all for attending today. And do feel free to reach out to me with an email or flick me a connection on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat with you further about careers in sustainability. Thanks.
Awesome.